I've never had a part in Robert's rules. Since I got clean in 2015, I've, the first meetings that I started going to for business meetings, they already had consensus base involved. And I took it to where my home group was, and another member had instilled it at that same time, who had a lot more experience than I did. And it kind of carried from there. So first I want to say that when I became a GSRA, it was at a business meeting where basically it was a service-based group where it was traditions, steps, and concepts. And I had no clue what was going on at all, what they were talking about. The only thing I really related to is when there were speakers on steps. So when it came to traditions and concepts, I had no clue what was going on. And I continued to go to that meeting because during the meeting, they had these small groups that they broke into and they spoke with. And then I would go to their business meetings, and then they asked me to be a GSRA. And the crazy thing was, like a month later, the GSR stepped away from the group and I became the GSR with absolutely no experience, with a big based group who attended the business meeting, who all had multiple years clean. Probably the least was 5 years clean. All of them had service under their belt. So I had no clue what was going on, no clue how to facilitate. I was probably the worst GSR to be involved in that situation whatsoever. But it was a fantastic learning experience because at first I wasn't sure if I could do it. I would be calling people after the business meeting saying, I think I'm wrong for this. I can't, I don't know what I'm doing, and they would just continue to say, we believe in you. We think you're going to be all right with this, keep moving forward, because I didn't know how to maintain ideas and, direct or guide or anything like that. So it was like a complete mess, but once I started to realize with the help of others when I should speak and when to guide or how to guide, it became a lot more easier. So once I started taking it to other groups, I actually felt like I found a niche in NA that I felt comfortable with. And first I want to start talking about like something that's very important for any group when you're doing business meetings is voting rights. Like I think in every policy you should have whoever's attending business meetings, that they have to attend a certain amount of business meetings to have voting rights. Now it's different for every group. My home group, it was you needed to show up for 3 out of the last 4 business meetings to have voting rights. Because you don't want people who just show up out of nowhere for what your group's autonomy was to get changed by somebody who just shows up for that day and throws an idea out there, and then it's the last time they ever see them, So I think that's very important. And also very important is to have time limits on when you're discussing things, depending on, the base of how many people are showing up for the business meetings. I think that's also very important. This way, all the voices are heard. When an idea is made, I think the best thing about CBDM, it's extremely flexible. It's so flexible. Like you can work with it in so many different ways. Like when somebody puts up an idea, and the first thing we do is have that person explain the idea, why they think it's good or whatnot. And then the first thing I'll ask is, anybody have any questions, amendments, or oppositions to this? And then they'll by a show of hands, and I'll work through that process. And then once we hear most of those voices, if there's only 2 or 3, and then we'll bring it back and I'll say it again. Now, does anybody have any more questions or anything like that, and go through that process? And the great thing about it is during that process, an amendment will come up, which changes the original idea. And then you turn to the original idea maker and you ask them, do you accept this amendment that this person has made to your idea? And if they say yes, then you start working with that as the new idea. And then you start the process over again. You start to ask a question, do you have any questions or oppositions to this, that, the other thing? And you continue to level with the temperature of the room by that, and usually once that you start working with the amendment, it usually comes together pretty quickly. A lot of times when an idea maker doesn't want to change change his idea with an amendment. What happens is sometimes the room starts to escalate, and you need to make sure that when people are speaking, you have them speak on the idea and on the idea alone with the amendment. Because if you start to steer in the woulda, shoulda, couldas, next thing you know, you got people talking over people. You have to make sure they raise their hand before they speak, and you have to pick them in an order. And also, like I was saying with the idea, like you have to stay on the idea, because a lot of times they'll start speaking on the idea, and then it kind of floats away. And next thing you know, the next person starts talking about what they floated away with. Next thing you know, the original idea is like out the window. So it's very important to make sure you steer, the people who are speaking to maintain that idea, and, when it comes to the amendments and all, back to where it starts to float away and people start getting a little worked up, you can also say, like, if you have other ideas on the table, you can step in as a GSR and be like, there's a lot going on with this idea. Is everybody willing to table this to another meeting? Because that's the flexibility of it, because it's not like you have area once a month, you have this meeting every week. Can we, bring it back next week? This way we all have time to think about it and come back with new ideas and maybe change it to a different idea, and work with it that way. This way you can also move on. It also brings the temperature of the people back down, from being, kind of excited and, maybe raising their voice or whatnot. It's a good way to, bring it back to level, and keeping that room calm is also a big thing. Like, when people start, I know for myself that when I start talking about something I get passionate about, I get really excited. I start to level up as I go, and it's important to try and maintain people to where the passion doesn't become an attitude, you know what I mean? And to try to bring it back, because there's times in a business meeting, like, things start to escalate where I have to say, let's say the serenity prayer to restart it, because, at the group level, you got a big basis of people who have been around and know what they're talking about. And then you have a big basis of people who really don't understand what's going on. So you want to make sure that room temperature stays kind of level, because the newcomers who don't know what's going on, they're not going to come back. They don't want to be a part of the shouting and the craziness and stuff. So, and it's always important that after each amendment or idea or wherever it starts to go, that you continue to ask, does anybody have any more questions about it? And once that starts to die down, usually you ask, somebody will say, can we bring it to a vote? And then once that vote comes, and depending on your policy, on what percentage of, what your oppositions are to kill an idea, let's just say there's 10 people in the room and you got 2 opposed to it, and your basis is 80%, and then you have one person, you have 3 person raising their hands to oppose it. You ask if anybody's willing to hold their vote down so the group can come to a consensus. Then if not, do you want to continue to discuss it? If not, then the idea will fail with that 3rd person, you know what I mean? And you can always bring it back. And that's another thing I like to reassure my groups of, that, when an idea is made, we can put trial periods on them, like 30, 60, 90 days on an idea. So, people don't feel like as soon as we make this idea and it passes, it's set in stone, stuff like that. What else was I going to talk about? Yeah. And bringing the best thing to do in for me when I come up with a group that has a lot of passion about a certain idea, and it is to table it and bring it back to another meeting. Because believe it or not, once everybody comes back with a new thought process on that whole thing that went on a week ago, it really comes out on top. It really comes out on top. So it's not always good to, once you start an idea and you get the craziness going on, to continue on that path. Because sometimes the idea gets lost and people get angry and whatnot. So as a GSR, like the previous people who were talking, it's extremely important to have GSRs know what they're doing when they're facilitating. And, something I found out for myself is I don't like being a GSR at my home group. Why? Because I lost my voice. I no longer have a voice in my own home group, you know, and it kind of bit me in the rear in that sense, because you start to see things going on that's no longer the way it used to be, and I don't like change. I like this in my home group, but that's a suggestion from me to you guys. Like, don't be a GSR at your own home group, but you know. All I know is that CBDM definitely works. I don't know about Robert's rules. I can't talk about them. I can't say what's good and what's bad. But from what I've learned from this, it's the best way to hear everybody from 30 days clean to 30 years. You know what I mean? Because everybody brings something to the table, whether somebody wants to hear it or not. And it's just like somebody said, when you walk away and at least your voice was heard, at least you had something to say. And then after the meetings, you can talk to other people about these, situations, and then come back and then make an idea of your own and then bring it to the table, because everybody has a voice. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to thank the group for asking me to share. And that's all I got. Thanks.